The lunch rush at the Wren House hit like clockwork noon. Sharp Charleston's well-heeled clientele flooding through the oak-trimmed doors like they were arriving for a secret society meeting. Linen suits, sun hats, clinking ice in sweet tea glasses. The kind of people who spoke softly, but expected to be heard. Mara Linwood tightened her apron and moved with practiced grace through the dining room, her tray balanced high, her smile just warm enough. 2 years in this place had taught her how to read a table before a single order was spoken. Corporate lunches wanted efficiency. Anniversary diners wanted attention. Solo women with books wanted space. She was good at it. Too good to still be working here, maybe, but good. She slid 2 seared scallop plates onto table 6, nodded at the regulars, and turned, then paused. Table 4 by the window was occupied. That wasn't unusual. It was a popular seat. But the occupant was a little girl, alone. She sat still, hands folded in her lap, her navy dress perfectly pressed curls pinned back with a blue ribbon. She couldn't have been more than 10. Not a phone, not a menu, not a single word. Just her eyes dark and quiet, fixed on the chair across from her. Waiting. Mara glanced at the hostess stand. No sign of a guardian. No one had mentioned a child guest. It tugged at something in her, not worry exactly, but recognition. She grabbed a glass and a pitcher of water, then crossed the room. "Hi there," she said gently, setting the glass down. "You thirsty?" The girl nodded but didn't speak. Mara poured the water. "Would you like anything else while you wait?" Another small nod. She kept her voice soft. "Do you know who you're meeting?" The girl hesitated. Then quietly, "My dad." Mara smiled. "Well, you picked the prettiest seat in the house. He'll spot you right away." The girl didn't smile back. Her hands gripped the edge of the table like she was bracing for something. That's when Mara heard it, the click of leather shoes and the stiff rustle of starch. "Brent." "Mara," he said sharply, already halfway across the floor. "Who seated her?" "No one," Mara said calmly. "She's waiting for her father." Brent stopped behind her. "This is not a waiting room. That table's for diners. Paying ones. She's clearly not here by herself, doesn't matter. You know the policy." Mara turned, lowered her voice. "Brent, she's a child. Alone. Upscale dress. Someone brought her here. And whoever did should have gone through the front like everyone else." Mara felt the girl flinch beside her. Brent wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. His words were too clean, too clipped, made for cutting without leaving marks. "Look," she said, keeping her voice even. "I'll cover the table if that's the issue. Just give her a few minutes." Brent's jaw ticked. "This isn't a soup kitchen, Mara. You're not here to play mother hen." That did it. She stepped slightly in front of the girl. "I'm not playing anything. I'm making sure a scared kid doesn't get humiliated in front of 100 strangers." Something in Brent's eyes hardened. But before he could respond, the atmosphere shifted. Not visibly, not loudly, just changed. Conversation at the nearby tables slowed. A few heads turned. Then in the doorway a man appeared, tailored suit, quiet shoes, an expression carved from stone. Mara didn't recognize him, but the girl did. She exhaled softly and straightened in her seat. The man crossed the room without hurry, his presence like gravity, subtle, inescapable. He stopped beside the table and placed one hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "She's with me," he said. His voice was low, measured. Brent's face turned pale. "Mr. Ashford." "I didn't realize Daniel Ashford." Mara blinked. She knew the name. Anyone in Charleston did. Billionaire hotelier, restaurateur, the man behind Ashford Group. She'd seen his picture once in a business article. It hadn't done him justice. Daniel ignored Brent completely. His eyes were on his daughter. and then after a moment on Mara. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at people, like he was reading more than what was said. She was being spoken to rudely, Mara said before she could stop herself. I didn't think that was right. He nodded slowly. It wasn't. Clara reached out just for a second and lightly brushed her hand against Mara's apron. Not clinging, just contact. Daniel saw it. Then quietly. Thank you. He turned to Brent. I'll handle the check. Bring menus. Brent swallowed. Yes, sir. Mara stepped back as the girl returned to her seat. She didn't speak again, but her eyes followed Mara all the way back to the kitchen. 2 hours later, the restaurant was quiet again. The tables cleared, the kitchen humming in prep for dinner. Mara was rolling silverware at the side station when the call came from the office. She knew before she walked in. Brent sat behind the desk, arms folded. His expression was professional, almost bored. This isn't working, he said. You challenged my authority in front of a guest. He was trying to make a child leave. That child was Daniel Ashford's daughter. You had no idea who she was. You just assumed you knew better. I treated her like a human being. And now we're down a regular customer. Mara stared at him. You really think he's not coming back because I gave his daughter a glass of water? Brent leaned back. Doesn't matter what I think. You put us in a liability situation. We're letting you go. You can collect your check at the end of the week. That was it. No yelling, no drama, just the clean slice of a polite dismissal. That night, Mara walked out of the service entrance with a cardboard box in her arms, her apron stuffed inside, her name tag loose in one corner. It wasn't raining yet, but the clouds were heavy with promise. She turned the corner onto Queen Street. A black SUV idled at the curb, tinted windows, driver in a suit. Quiet. She didn't notice the face behind the glass. Small hand pressed against the window, but Clara saw her, and so did Daniel Ashford. He didn't say anything. Not yet. But he saw the waitress who stood up for his daughter. And he wasn't done with her yet. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The knock at the door came just after 7:00 a.m. sharp and deliberate, the kind that didn't belong to a neighbor or someone selling cookies. Mara blinked at it, still in yesterday's jeans, barefoot, her curls pulled into a messy bun. The sting from yesterday's humiliation hadn't worn off, and neither had the headache behind her eyes. She'd barely slept. Brent's smug voice still echoed in her head. She hesitated, then looked through the peephole. A man in a charcoal gray suit stood in the hallway, older, polished. A black car idled at the curb behind him, visible through the narrow window at the end of the hall. Miss Linwood. His voice was clear, southern formal. I have a letter from Mr. Daniel Ashford. Mara's stomach dipped. She cracked the door, leaving the chain fastened. I think you have the wrong person. He didn't flinch. You're Mara Linwood. Mr. Ashford asked me to deliver this to you personally. The envelope he held was thick, cream-colored, and embossed with a silver crest Ashford Group's logo. Her name was handwritten across the front in black ink. Her full name. She opened the door just enough to take it. And you are Thomas Langley, Mr. Ashford's executive driver. Of course, even his driver had an executive title. What's this about? I believe the letter explains everything he said, then offered a small, courteous smile. Take your time. I'll wait in the car. The envelope was heavier than it should have been. She stepped back into her apartment and closed the door slowly. It smelled like coffee and sleep. Her grandmother's framed photo still sat near the kitchen sink, and the corner of a past-due electricity bill peeked out from the drawer. She broke the wax seal and pulled out a single folded page. Miss Linwood, I understand you are no longer with the Wren house. I'd like to meet with you to discuss a professional opportunity. You demonstrated discretion, composure, and integrity under pressure. That's rare in any field. I have a position within Ashford Group I believe you're uniquely qualified for. Details will be provided if you're interested. Thomas will bring you to our offices if you accept. No obligation, no expectation. Daniel Ashford. She read it again, then once more. No title, no demand, just an offer. She sat on the edge of the couch, still clutching the paper. Is this real? She whispered aloud. A small voice inside her, a voice that hadn't spoken in a long time, said, maybe it was. 25 minutes later, she stepped into the black SUV. She'd changed into a navy dress, and clean flats pulled her hair into a neat twist. She felt underdressed, overwhelmed. Thomas opened the door for her like she was royalty. Comfortable temperature, Miss Linwood? I think so, she said softly. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror once they were moving. He doesn't do this often. She looked up. Excuse me, Mr. Ashford. Reaching out personally. It means something. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The car rolled past cobblestone streets and historic mansions, eventually stopping in front of a glass and brick building that stretched upward like ambition itself. Ashford Group Headquarters. Inside the lobby was all polished wood brass accents and quiet power. No loud branding, no noise, just presence. A woman at the front desk greeted her with a smile. Miss Linwood, welcome. Mr. Ashford is expecting you. Top floor. Valerie will escort you. An elevator door opened before she could even think of backing out. Valerie Rains looked like someone who'd walked straight out of a lifestyle magazine-tailored pantsuit, silver hair twisted into a smooth chignon, a voice like steady rain. She didn't ask for small talk, just offered her hand and said, right this way. The elevator glided up in silence. When the doors opened, the floor was quiet, the kind of quiet money could buy. Offices lined with books, glass doors with minimalist nameplates. Natural light spilled across dark hardwood. Valerie gestured toward an open door. He's inside. Mara stepped in. Daniel Ashford stood near the window, his suit jacket draped over a chair sleeves, rolled up phone in one hand. He ended the call as she entered and turned. He looked different in daylight, less like a figurehead, more like a man. Miss Linwood, he said, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure I would. He nodded once. I didn't expect certainty, just curiosity. Mara sat carefully in the chair across from his desk. The room was neat, personal, tasteful. A single photo on the shelf behind him, his daughter smiling. Younger. You said something about an opportunity, Mara said, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes. He sat as well, folding his hands on the desk. I need someone to review our hospitality division's finances. Not from the top down, from the ground level. You've worked in it. You've seen it. And more importantly, you're not afraid to speak up. I'm not an accountant, not professionally. You have a degree from UNC, he said without hesitation. Your resume's better than most mid-level hires. The only thing you lack is connections. That's my responsibility, not yours. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. Why me? He didn't blink. Because my daughter trusted you, and that means more than any background check. Mara felt something catch in her chest. You were watching. I was listening. He looked down at his hands. She hasn't looked anyone in the eye since my wife died. You changed that. Mara swallowed hard. He cleared his throat. You'd work here. Full benefits. Starting salary $85. She blinked. 1,000, yes. She exhaled slowly. That's more than I've ever made in my life. You've earned it. Just for doing the right thing when it cost you something. The silence stretched. Then quietly, "What exactly would I be looking for?" Daniel paused. "Whatever doesn't make sense," he said. She nodded slowly. Then, "And if what I find makes someone uncomfortable, I expect honesty," he said. "Even when it's inconvenient?" She studied him. There was something in his tone, not cold, not threatening, but worn, like a man who'd learned to doubt what others told him. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course." He stood. "But I hope you say yes." Mara rose as well. She hesitated, then looked him directly in the eye. "Mr. Ashford, why do I feel like there's more to this than just a job he didn't answer right away?" Then, almost too softly, "Because you're right." Outside the window, Charleston shimmered in the morning light, and Mara Linwood stood on the edge of something she hadn't seen coming. Not power, not money, but something far rarer. A second chance. Mara stood outside the Ashford building long after the SUV had driven her back. The sun had shifted west, casting long shadows across the brick sidewalk. Her hand gripped the letter again, crumpled now at the corners. $85,000. Health insurance, an office, a man who looked at her not like a waitress, but like someone with weight, someone with value. But it wasn't the salary that made her heart thrum. It was the way he'd said her name, the way he said, "She hasn't looked anyone in the eye since my wife died." There was something buried in those words, grief certainly, but also something else, a quiet invitation. Not romantic, not yet, just human. She hadn't been looked at like that in years. When she got home, her grandmother was already in the kitchen, humming low and soft over a pot of chicken stew. Tina didn't turn around when she spoke. "That man again?" Mara blinked. "How do you know you left here like someone holding her breath?" Tina stirred gently. "Only two kinds of men make women do that, troublemakers or life changers." Mara dropped her purse onto the chair, sank into the one across from it. "He's not a troublemaker." "Then I guess we better find you a new notebook and some good pens." She looked up. "You think I should take it?" Tina turned wooden spoon in hand. "I think God doesn't knock twice. And I think that little girl needed someone who didn't treat her like she was broken. That was you." Mara hesitated. "It's not a charity offer. He says I'm qualified." Tina smiled. "Baby, no one said you weren't." The next morning, Mara stood outside the Ashford elevator, wearing a navy blouse and gray slacks she hadn't worn since college. Her shoes pinched slightly. Valerie greeted her with a quiet nod and handed her a badge with her photo already printed. "Welcome to the team." The floor they led her to wasn't what she expected. It wasn't a sterile office bullpen or a plush executive suite. It was a smaller, tucked-away corner near the accounting department. Glass walls, yes, but minimal. Just enough to feel exposed, but not enough to feel impressive. A desk, a laptop, a thin stack of files already waiting. Mara looked around. No warm welcome banners, no office tour, just a space and a task. She liked that. It felt real. Valerie lingered just long enough to say Mr. Ashford asked that you report directly to him with anything unusual. Keep it quiet for now. Why? Because trust is hard to come by at the top. She left before Mara could ask what that meant. She spent most of the day reviewing vendor invoices from the Wren house. Familiar names jumped out. She remembered signing for produce deliveries, linen replacements, those specialty teas that no one ever actually ordered. But the numbers? Some didn't add up. Same vendor name. Same date. 2 invoices. Slightly different amounts. Could be a mistake. Could be something else. By lunch, her eyes were burning. She stood stretched and stepped out for a break. The hallway was quiet except for soft conversation drifting from the conference lounge. "You hired her to audit our books?" It was a man's voice, sharp, controlled. "She's internal," Daniel's voice replied, even and low. "She's a waitress. She has a degree in financial operations. You're risking reputation on someone who poured coffee last week." Mara froze. Daniel answered without flinching. "She stood up for Clara when no one else did. That's the only credential that mattered." Silence. Then the door clicked open. She stepped back instinctively, pressing to the wall, heart racing. Daniel exited a lone expression unreadable. He stopped when he saw her. "How's your first day?" he asked. She lifted her chin. Apparently controversial. He studied her, and something in his features softened. "That wasn't meant for your ears, but it was true. People fear what they don't control." Mara folded her arms. "And you don't fear that he took a moment before answering. Only when it risks someone I care about." There it was again, his words always laced with layers. Mara glanced down the hallway. "Your friend doesn't think I belong here. He's not my friend, and you belong wherever you choose to stand?" She let the silence settle between them. Then quietly, "She seems lonely." Daniel blinked. "Who, Clara?" His eyes flicked to the window. "She is." "Does she have anyone friends a counselor? None that she connects with?" His voice grew distant. "Her mother passed away suddenly. Last year. I think she learned that people disappear, so she stopped reaching out." Mara nodded, throat tight. "Grief does that." He turned back to her. "You know I lost both parents by 18, raised by my grandmother." Daniel's eyes softened further. "That explains your spine." She smiled faintly. "I think she gave me most of it." He reached for his cufflink, paused, then said, "Would you like to see Clara again?" Mara blinked. "Now I pick her up today from her tutor. She mentioned you. First time she's asked about anyone in months." Mara hesitated, every alarm in her mind going off. This was more than just numbers now. This was personal. Dangerous in the quietest kind of way. But then she remembered Clara's hand on her apron. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." The car ride was quiet. Clara sat in the back, earbuds and staring out the window. She didn't speak until they reached Daniel's home, a beautiful brick estate nestled near the Ashley River. Old trees, quiet grounds, nothing loud or modern. Inside, Clara hovered near the foyer, unsure. Daniel crouched beside her. "Remember what we said? Just for a few minutes." She nodded slightly, then looked up at Mara. "Do you still have the apron?" she asked. Mara smiled. "I do. I liked the pocket." Mara knelt. "Me too. I always kept peppermints in it." Clara blinked. "For kids, no for me." "But I shared." A tiny flicker of something, maybe a smile, passed over Clara's lips. Daniel watched silently, then stood stepping back. "I'll let you two talk." Mara sat with Clara on the back patio. They didn't speak for long. Just small things, books, favorite colors, the way lemon smells in summer. But when Clara reached for her hand, as the sun dipped low behind the oaks, Mara squeezed it gently and didn't let go. And from the window above, Daniel watched them. The woman who had been told she didn't belong. The daughter who had forgotten how to connect. And something shifted in him, not a decision, not yet, but a possibility. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The office was unusually quiet when Mara arrived the next morning, too quiet for midweek. Emails had trickled in, but nothing urgent. No meetings, no pressure. Valerie had sent her a quick good morning with an attached spreadsheet and a note. "Please review this quietly. Report only to Mr. Ashford." That alone set her pulse ticking faster. The spreadsheet listed vendor invoices from multiple Ashford-owned restaurants. She recognized most of them. The Wren House, Copper and Time, Brindle Street Cafe. But a few line items felt off. 2 payments to a seafood supplier on the same day, different amounts, different reference codes. Identical invoices from 2 different locations only a day apart. All signed off by someone she didn't know. She leaned closer, tapping a pen against her lips. The numbers weren't dramatic enough to raise alarms, just enough to get lost in the shuffle. Unless someone was looking. She made notes. Quietly. Thoroughly. By noon, her eyes burned from staring at the screen. She stood stretched and stepped into the hallway just as Valerie appeared. "He wants to see you." Mara blinked. Right now, top floor, her stomach flipped. Daniel's office was filled with light. The blinds had been pulled open to let the late morning sun flood in, casting soft gold across the floor. He stood by the window, a glass of water in his hand, shirt sleeves rolled, tie loosened. His jacket hung neatly on the back of a chair. He looked tired. Not disheveled. Daniel Ashford didn't do disheveled, but worn around the edges like a man carrying more than he ever says aloud. Mara stepped in, holding her notes. "You asked for me." He turned, nodded once. "You found something." She lifted the paper slightly. "I think so. Sit." She did, laying the printout on the desk between them. There are duplicate payments, small ones, but consistent. They're using different vendors, but the formatting is too clean. It's like someone copied and pasted, just enough to look real. He studied the paper, silent. "I haven't gone deeper," she added. "Didn't want to flag it in the system. It could be internal, someone hiding behind the volume." Daniel ran a hand over his jaw, then looked up at her. "You're not wrong." That startled her. "You already knew I had suspicions, but I needed someone who wasn't already tangled in it to look." He met her gaze. Someone I could trust. Mara felt her throat tighten. "What happens next?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair. "We go quiet. Keep digging. If it's who I think it is. They've been at this a long time." She hesitated. "You think it's someone close to you?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached across the desk and tapped one of the payment lines. "This supplier was introduced by someone I've known for 15 years. The weight in his voice told her everything she needed to know. Trust wasn't just a word for Daniel, it was currency. And someone had spent his without permission. "Why me?" she asked again, softly. "You have teams, auditors, experts." He looked up at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Because when you told Brent no, you didn't hesitate, even when you had everything to lose." Mara swallowed. He stood and crossed the room to the window again. "People in my world, they learn to bend, to tolerate things that don't feel right. It starts small, a favor here, an overlooked mistake there. Eventually they stop noticing altogether." He turned slightly. "You notice." The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that buzzed in your ears. Mara rose slowly, heart pounding. "If I keep digging, things could get messy." Daniel nodded. "They will." She paused, then said, "Okay." He smiled faintly. "You're not afraid of much, are you?" "I am," she said honestly. "But not of the truth." His eyes lingered on hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, the sharp businessman softened not into someone broken, but someone real. "I'm having dinner with Clara tonight," he said. "She asked if you could join us." Mara blinked. She did. "She doesn't ask for people, not since—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Mara hesitated, then nodded. "I'd love to." The restaurant was quiet, tucked off a side street in the historic district. Not one of Daniel's, just a small place with linen napkins, low lighting, and a host who didn't make a scene about who they were. Clara was already seated when Mara arrived. She wore a simple yellow dress and held a folded napkin in her lap like it was keeping her grounded. "Hi, Clara," said shyly. Mara sat across from her. "Hi there. You look beautiful." Clara smiled an actual small smile, and Daniel, watching from the side, exhaled quietly and took his seat. Dinner was soft conversation. Clara liked art. Mara did too. They both hated olives. Daniel listened more than he spoke, watching the two of them like something sacred was unfolding in front of him. When dessert came, Clara reached across the table and slid a small folded note toward Mara. She opened it. It was a drawing. Stick figures, 3 of them. A girl with curly hair, a tall man in a suit, and a little girl with a bow. Beneath it, my new favorite table. Mara blinked fast. Daniel saw the shift in her but didn't press. He simply reached for his glass and said quietly, "Some tables change everything." Outside, as Clara climbed into the car with the driver, Daniel lingered with Mara on the sidewalk. The night air was warm, magnolia-scented, soft. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For seeing her?" Mara looked up at him. "She sees you too, you know." Daniel gave a small, almost self-deprecating smile. "Sometimes I wonder. You're doing better than you think." He looked at her, then really looked, and for a beat too long, they just stood there in silence. Not awkward, not romantic, just charged. "I should go," Mara said, stepping back. He nodded once. "I'll walk you to your car." She let him, and as they walked side by side beneath the soft glow of Charleston street lamps, neither of them said anything more. But something had shifted again. Not the destination, just the distance between them. Mara arrived early the next morning, the Ashford Group offices, still quiet sun filtering in through the high lobby windows like soft music. The silence was welcome. It gave her room to breathe, to think. And this morning her thoughts were a storm. She kept seeing Clara's drawing. The little stick figures. The label, "My new favorite table." It wasn't just cute, it was weighty. Real. The kind of innocent truth only a child could offer, unfiltered, undesigned. Somehow it made everything more complicated, more personal. She stepped into her office space, still barely furnished, still a little too clean. But on her desk sat a fresh folder. Another file Valerie had left without a word. No note. No subject line. Just dates, figures, and more of those strange payments. She scanned the first page, and her heart dropped. The same seafood vendor. The same amounts. But now they appeared at a different restaurant in the chain Coastal Row, a place on the edge of Charleston where Daniel rarely visited in person. And the approval signature not Brent. Someone named S. Lott. She stood up, took a breath, and walked straight to Valerie's office. Valerie looked up, unreadable as always. "You found something? I have a name." S. Lott. They've signed off on at least 5 questionable vendor payments across 3 properties. Valerie opened her laptop, typing swiftly. Simon Lott. Mid-level operations manager. Been with the company 9 years. Quiet. Doesn't draw attention. Is he close to Daniel? Not directly, but he reports to Kyle Marston. Mara paused. And where does Kyle sit? Valerie's eyes met hers. Right across the boardroom table from Daniel, the implication landed hard. Should I stop? Mara asked. Valerie didn't flinch. You wouldn't be here if you stopped easily. Mara turned to leave, but Valerie's voice stopped her at the door. He trusts you, she said quietly. Mara glanced back. Daniel, Valerie added. Not many people get that. Mara swallowed hard and walked out. Later that afternoon, as she crossed the building toward the cafe on the ground floor, she nearly collided with Kyle Marston himself. He was on the phone laughing, softly tailored blazer, sharp enough to cut glass. He glanced at her, only briefly offering a generic smile before returning to his call. She knew instantly. This man didn't see her, not really. Just another assistant, maybe an intern. Certainly not someone with eyes on his department. He had no idea. Back at her desk, she dug deeper. Vendor tax IDs, cross-checks, patterns. She didn't notice the time until Valerie's voice came through the small intercom speaker. "Mr. Ashford is asking for you. Conference room B." Her heart knocked once hard against her ribs. Conference room B was warm, with late afternoon light. Daniel stood at the window again, jacket off one hand, resting on the table, the other holding a glass of water. He looked like a man who hadn't blinked in an hour. "You found more," he said, not turning around. "Yes." She closed the door softly. "Same vendor. More locations. Same digital pattern. It's buried but not impossible to follow. Simon Lott is the name on most of it." He nodded once, still facing the window. "Simon reports to Kyle." "I know." He turned now, slowly, eyes fixed on hers. "I didn't want it to be him." Mara stepped forward, laying a small stack of printed pages on the table. "It might not be, but it's close enough that we have to find out." He picked up the papers, flipped through them once. "If Kyle's involved, or even if he's just ignored it, it'll get messy. He's not just an employee, he's family, my wife's cousin." That stopped her cold. Daniel sighed quietly. Clara adored him when she was younger. He used to bring her art kits, her first violin. He was part of our home before the company ever grew. Mara said nothing. She didn't need to. The pain in his voice filled the room. "I thought I owed him loyalty," he said. "But now I wonder if that loyalty's been used against me." Mara finally spoke, her voice low. "What do you want to do?" He met her gaze. "Keep going," he said. "I want to know how far it goes. Quietly, carefully. I'll need deeper access to the restaurant systems. I'll have Valerie arrange it." She nodded, then paused. Daniel. The use of his name made something shift between them. "If this leads back to Kyle," she said gently, "Clara's going to feel it." "I know. You'll need to prepare her." "I don't know how." Mara took a slow breath. "Then maybe don't try to do it alone." The silence between them was full of weight, and something else undeniable unsaid. He stepped closer, not inappropriately, just near enough for his voice to drop. "You've only been here a week," he said, "but it feels like longer. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided." She smiled faintly. "Let me know when you do." A beat passed. Then he nodded, lips barely lifted at the corners. "I'll walk you out." They stepped into the evening air together. Charleston was wrapped in gold, and rose light, the streets quiet but alive with the hum of closing hours and dinner reservations. A breeze moved through the trees above, soft and scented with salt. As they walked toward the side lot where her car was parked, Mara slowed. "You ever wonder how it all got so complicated?" she asked. Daniel glanced at her. "What part? All of it. Running things, protecting people, having money, power." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't want power. I wanted freedom. But you can't have one without the other. Not at this level. And Clara, she never asked for any of it." They stopped at her car. Mara turned to face him, keys in hand. "She needs someone honest in her life. She has you now." The way he said it, like it wasn't just a statement, but a promise, made her heart ache a little. She didn't respond. Just opened the door. He stepped back, gave her space. But before she left, he said quietly, "I'm glad you're here, Mara." She looked up. "So am I." And with that, she pulled the door closed and drove off, heart pounding with more than just facts and figures. Because this wasn't just about the fraud anymore. Something else was unfolding. Something she hadn't planned for, and it was only getting deeper. The next morning, Mara arrived before anyone else the office, still dark except for the dim security lights glowing along the hallway. Her footsteps echoed a little too loudly, but she didn't mind. Solitude gave her clarity, and today she needed all the clarity she could find. She slipped her badge through the scanner and entered the secure network on her laptop. Valerie had followed through full access to the restaurant division's vendor files dating back 2 years. Every invoice, every approval signature, every purchase order code. The deeper she dug, the more the pattern revealed itself. Not just seafood suppliers, but dry goods too. Specialty wines, table linens, subtle overcharges masked as rush delivery or inventory adjustment. But always small. Just under the threshold that would trigger a flag, and always approved by someone linked to Kyle's chain of command. Mara leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. This wasn't just a few bad invoices. It was a coordinated system. And Kyle might not just be overlooking it. He might be benefiting from it. The air felt heavier in the room. She stood and moved to the window, watching the sun rise over Charleston's historic rooftops. The light spilled down like grace, warm and golden, and far too gentle for what she was starting to feel. Someone knocked softly on her door. She turned. Daniel. He wore a gray suit, no-tie shirt slightly open at the collar. His expression was unreadable, but his presence filled the doorway. "Am I interrupting?" he asked. "No," she said. "Just trying to make sense of things." He stepped in, closing the door behind him. "Valerie said you've been here since 6. She smiled faintly. "Old habit. When I was waitressing, mornings were the only time I had to myself." He walked to her desk and glanced at the open files on her screen. "You found more, a lot more." He exhaled through his nose. How bad Mara swallowed. Bad enough that it's not just oversight, it's intentional, layered, and coordinated. He sat in the chair across from her, resting his hands on his knees. Does it trace to Kyle? Not directly, but every person signing these invoices rolls up to him. He looked down, silent. Mara spoke gently. "Daniel, I don't know if he's behind it, but he's in the middle of it. And if he knows what's happening, he's been letting it continue for years." He didn't look up. Just nodded once, slowly. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. He was one of the only people who stayed after I lost Grace. Mara leaned forward slightly. "Your wife?" He nodded. "There were weeks I didn't show up to the office, times I forgot to eat, sleep. Kyle covered meetings, handled Clara's school pickups, said all the right things." Mara's heart ached. That must have meant everything. It did. And now... He shook his head. "Now I don't know if it was loyalty or strategy." She hesitated. "People can be both." He looked at her, then really looked. "You ever trusted someone only to realize they saw you as leverage?" "Yes," she said softly. He waited. "My father's business partner. After the accident, he promised to help with the estate. Told my grandmother we'd be taken care of. Turns out he'd already sold off what little was left under the table before Dad's funeral even ended." Daniel blinked slowly. "I'm sorry. I was 16, she said. "That's when I learned some people smile while they steal." The silence stretched between them, raw and unguarded. "You've been through more than I knew," he said. "So have you." His eyes held hers, and for a moment the air changed. Not romantic, not yet, but close. Too close. She broke the silence. "What do we do next? I want to confront Kyle," he said. "But I need to be sure. I need something undeniable. You'll have it, she said. Give me 2 more days. He nodded. Be careful. I will. He stood, then hesitated. Clara asked about you again. She's drawing something for you. Mara smiled. She's amazing. She is. His voice dipped. And you're good for her. She stood too, smoothing her blouse. I think she's good for me. He lingered a second longer, as if he wanted to say more. Then he turned and left. Later that afternoon, Mara walked through the back hallway toward the executive suite. She had questions about an expense report and knew Valerie would have the answers. As she passed the glass-walled boardroom, she paused. Kyle was inside. Alone. He stood at the far end of the room speaking into his phone in a hushed voice, back turned to the door. Mara didn't mean to eavesdrop. She just didn't move. They're digging, Kyle said. I don't know how much she's seen yet, but if she keeps looking, it'll blow. Pause. I told you Daniel's too close to this one. She's different, not one of the usual ladder climbers. Another pause. No, not yet, but I'll handle it. Trust me. Mara's blood ran cold. She slipped quietly away before he could turn around. Back at her desk, she opened a new document, began cataloging every transaction, every voice memo, every signature. And with each keystroke, her hand steadied. This wasn't just numbers anymore. This was personal. That night, her phone buzzed just as she stepped into her apartment. A text from an unknown number. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. I have something to show you. Come alone. DA. She stared at the screen, heart thudding. Tomorrow would change everything. And Mara Linwood wasn't going to run from it. The morning air was thick with fog as Mara pulled into the private drive that wound behind Ashford Group's Charleston office. Spanish moss hung low over the narrow trees, swaying gently in the early breeze. She checked the time, 7:56 a.m. Her pulse had been ticking since she left the house. Daniel's text had been short, but the weight behind it hadn't left her since it arrived. Come alone. She parked near the side entrance, no one else in sight. The building loomed quiet, not yet awake with the usual hum of weekday voices. Just as she reached for her bag, the back door eased open. Daniel stood in the threshold jacket, off sleeves rolled. His tie hung loose at his collar, and his expression was unreadable. You came, he said. You asked. He stepped back, motioning her inside. Follow me. No elevator, no boardroom. He led her down a hallway she hadn't seen before, past locked conference doors and shuttered windows, until they reached a steel-framed door with no sign on it. Daniel unlocked it with a keycard and pushed it open. Inside was a small room, bare gray walls, a desk with 2 chairs, and a single laptop open and glowing. Mara stepped in slowly. What is this I keep it off network? For anything that can't be traced back through company systems. She turned to face him. You think you're being watched? I don't think he said. I know. He walked over to the laptop, tapped a few keys, and turned the screen toward her. What she saw sent a chill up her spine. Email chains, internal transfers, a document trail that connected Kyle Marston to a private shell company registered in Delaware, one that just happened to be receiving payouts from Ashford's restaurant vendors. Mara leaned in. That's where the money's going. Daniel nodded. The account structure is complex, but not airtight. I started digging months ago. Quietly. I found fragments, enough to be suspicious. But I couldn't prove the bridge between Kyle and the vendor chain. That's where you came in. Mara sat slowly. You already knew. I had shadows. You're the one who brought light. She looked at him, voice low. So why not confront him now, because if I go at him without airtight evidence, he'll spin it, make it personal, discredit you. Call it Grief, paranoia, protectiveness over Clara. He's smart enough to manipulate the board. Mara absorbed that. Then quietly, "What do you want from me? I want you to finish it." Her brows lifted. "You've already built the foundation," he said. "The work you've done, it connects the dots I couldn't. All it needs now is structure, a final audit report, something I can take to the board and say, this is what's been happening under our noses." She didn't answer right away. "Then, if I do this, I'll be exposed." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Yes, I'll be the one they associate with this fallout, not you. I won't let that happen. You can't promise that." His silence was answer enough. She stood, walked to the far wall, arms crossed tight. The room felt smaller now, colder. "This will crush Clara," she said. "She sees Kyle as family." Daniel's voice was rough. "That's what terrifies me." They stood in silence, the air between them, thick with unspoken truths. "I don't want her to think this is what love looks like," he said finally. "People smiling to your face while stealing from your father." Mara turned, her voice breaking just slightly. "She won't." "I don't know," he said. "Grief distorts things. And I've made enough mistakes since Grace passed that I've run out of room to get this wrong." She looked at him, really looked. For all his power and wealth, for all the sharp lines and strategic language, this was a man stripped down to the bone. A father, a widower, a man holding his legacy and his daughter in the same trembling hand. And maybe that's what broke her resolve. "I'll finish the report," she said. "But we do this together." He looked up. "I don't mean you hovering," she added. "I mean if this turns to ash, we stand in it side by side." His expression softened. "You have my word." She held his gaze. "I want more than that." He tilted his head. "I want transparency. If I'm risking my name, my career, I want to know what I'm standing in front of." "All of it," Daniel nodded slowly. "Then you'll know everything." By mid-afternoon, Mara was buried in spreadsheets. Her office had become Command Central, a quiet war room of numbers, audit trails, and internal policy reviews. Valerie had slipped her more files, silent as ever, a ghost in stilettos. Every now and then, Daniel would step in wordless and drop a fresh folder on her desk. He'd stand there for a beat, eyes meeting hers, then walk out again. They didn't need to speak. Not for this. By early evening, she pushed back from her desk, eyes burning. She stood and stretched, then walked out to the patio near the south exit. It overlooked the water-golden light shimmering across the river. A few benches lined the edge, and Daniel was already sitting on one sleeve's rolled tie, now gone altogether. He didn't look surprised when she sat beside him. "I miss the days when my biggest worry was whether the oysters were too briny," he said. She laughed gently. "You were never just running restaurants, were you?" "No," he said. "I was trying to build something permanent, something Clara could one day be proud of." "She already is," Mara said quietly. "I hope so." They sat in silence a while, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then Daniel turned slightly, his voice lower. "You ever think about how strange this all is? This you, me, here, now?" She smiled just a little. "Every minute. I keep wondering." He paused. "What my life might have looked like if I'd met someone like you 10 years ago?" She turned to him. "And I wouldn't have been ready." And now his eyes held hers. "I don't know." The air stretched. Mara looked away, heart thudding. "I think we're standing on a wire, Daniel, and I don't know where it leads." He nodded. "But you're still walking." She smiled sadly. "So are you." They didn't touch. They didn't need to. But something passed between them, then heavier than a glance, softer than a promise. The kind of moment that lingers long after the world moves on. And for the first time since she'd taken the job, Mara wasn't thinking about reports or invoices or signatures. She was thinking about him. The following morning, the buzz in the office had shifted too quiet in some corners, too loud in others. Mara noticed it the moment she stepped into the building. People were smiling tighter, pausing conversations when others walked by. Whispers hummed beneath polite greetings, and hallway glances lingered just a moment too long. Someone knew something. Or suspected. She moved quickly to her desk, flipping open her laptop. Her audit report was halfway done, but the final section, the financial web that could link Kyle directly to the shell company, still needed confirmation. She had traced payment requests that appeared auto-approved, all from mid-tier managers under Kyle's supervision. But it wasn't enough. She needed proof that Kyle himself had orchestrated or benefited. And now, it felt like time was running out. Her phone buzzed on the desk. "Daniel meeting with Kyle this afternoon. Just the two of us. 3:00 p.m. Mara stared at the screen, her breath catching. This was it. She tapped back quickly. "Don't go in without me finishing the last section." "Daniel, I won't say anything yet. I just want to see how he moves when he feels cornered." She stared at the message for a moment, then tucked her phone away. Across the room, Valerie appeared in her doorway. "There's someone waiting for you," she said softly. "Conference room A." Mara frowned. Who Valerie's voice lowered. "His name's Elias. Works in IT compliance. Said he has something for you." Mara stood slowly. Does Daniel know Valerie didn't answer? But her eyes said enough. Elias was in his mid-30s, a little nervous, tapping a pen between his fingers. When Mara entered, he stood abruptly, as if expecting someone more intimidating. I hope this isn't crossing a line," he said. "But I heard what you're working on." Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. "How I monitor internal file access logs. I don't see content, but I see who's touching what. You've been deep in archived vendor contracts for a week straight. That doesn't happen unless someone's either incredibly bored or digging." She took a slow breath. "And you decided to reach out. Why? Because last year I flagged a vendor address mismatch that got buried." Mara's heart ticked up. "Buried by who I escalated it to my supervisor. He passed it to Kyle. Of course." Elias opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were 3 documents, 1 original invoice, 1 altered version, and a routing confirmation. "All I know is the vendor address changed, the bank routing changed, but the vendor name stayed the same. I flagged it. I followed protocol. And then..." Silence. Mara looked up. "You saved copies?" He nodded once, just in case someone finally cared. Her voice caught slightly. "I do. I know." Back at her desk, Mara worked like a woman with minutes left to breathe. Every number, every signature, every subtle shift in the system now fit together like a jagged puzzle, finally snapping into place. By noon, her audit report had a name at the center. Kyle Marston. She printed 2 copies, one for Daniel, one locked in her bag. No flash drives, no company network uploads, just ink paper and her heartbeat pounding in her ears. At 2:48, her phone buzzed. "Daniel, he's early. He's in my office. Take the side stairs." Mara slipped out report in hand. Daniel's office door was closed when she arrived, but she could hear the rhythm of the conversation from the hallway, measured professional calm on the surface. She waited near the side panel of glass just out of view, holding her breath. Inside, Daniel's voice was even. "Some things came to my attention recently. Numbers, vendors, approvals I don't recall signing off on." Kyle laughed softly. "You know how messy the middle layers get? These things fall through the cracks." Daniel didn't laugh. "These aren't cracks, Kyle. These are patterns." A pause. Then Kyle's voice dipped lower. "Are we really doing this? I'm asking for honesty. You already made up your mind, didn't you?" Daniel didn't respond. Kyle's tone sharpened just slightly. You lost your footing when Grace died. We all saw it. I cleaned up what you couldn't. I kept the board calm. I kept this place running. You kept skimming while I was grieving, Daniel said, voice quiet now. Don't act like it's betrayal. You think these places run on virtue alone? Mara felt something break inside her. Kyle kept talking. You needed loyalty. I gave it. I deserve more than a pat on the back. You deserve consequences, Daniel replied. Then came a noise, soft like someone standing. You're going to let a waitress rewrite the company's history? Mara stepped into view. No, she said. I'm just helping tell the truth. Kyle turned his eyes dark with recognition. You have no idea what this will cost. Daniel stood behind his desk, arms folded. That sounds like a confession. Kyle's silence was answer enough. Mara laid the report on Daniel's desk, her voice steady. Every transaction, every redirect, every shell account. Backed up, verified. 2 sources. One from IT compliance, one from audit records. Kyle looked between them, eyes narrowing. This isn't over. No, Daniel said. It's just beginning. Later that evening, long after Kyle had been escorted from the building and legal had been briefed, Mara sat on the rooftop terrace outside Daniel's office, staring out at the skyline. Daniel joined her 2 cups of coffee in hand. I owe you more than I can say, he said. No, she replied, voice low. You trusted me. That's enough. He studied her in the soft light. You didn't just help me protect the company. I know. You protected Clara. That broke something in her. A small, quiet tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. Daniel reached for her hand. Gentle nothing rushed. We're safe now, he said. She didn't let go. Not this time. She didn't want to. Clara was waiting by the fountain when Mara arrived. It was Saturday just after 10. The downtown park was alive with families and street musicians, the scent of kettle corn and baked pastries drifting from nearby vendors. But somehow in the middle of all the weekend noise, Clara looked small. She wore a soft green sweater and held a sketch pad against her chest like a shield. Mara crossed the brick path, heart catching in her throat. Clara looked up. You came. Mara smiled gently. You think I'd say no to coffee and art? Clara shrugged. Some people disappear after big things happen. Mara sat beside her on the bench, letting that sentence settle. I'm not some people, she said. Clara looked down at the sketch pad. Her voice was quiet. Dad said Kyle's gone. He is. Clara swallowed. Is he in trouble? Mara chose her words carefully. He broke some big rules. It hurt people, including your dad. So yes, there are consequences. But your dad's trying to handle it with grace. Clara nodded, lips pressed tight. He loved you, you know, Mara added. Clara didn't answer. They sat in silence for a while, watching a group of toddlers chase bubbles across the lawn. I don't know who to believe sometimes, Clara finally whispered. That's okay, Mara said softly. It's not your job to figure all this out. That's ours. The grown-ups. The ones who are supposed to protect you. Clara turned her head. You protected him. I tried. Clara reached into her sketch pad and pulled out a new drawing. 3 people again. This time they were sitting under a tree with a picnic blanket and a book. The little girl had curly hair again. The woman had the same braid Mara always wore when working. The man, he was smiling this time. Clara handed it over. I drew us, she said. Mara blinked back the sudden heat behind her eyes. It's beautiful. I want us to do that, Clara added. A real picnic. No phones, just us. Mara smiled. Then let's make it happen. That afternoon, Daniel called her. His voice was lighter but tired. Legal's already doing their thing. I've been on calls all morning. You need a break, Mara said. So do I. There was a pause. Then join me for dinner tonight. Mara hesitated. It's just food, he added. No pressure, just something normal. She smiled. Okay. Where? My place. Daniel's home wasn't what she expected. Yes, it was large. Yes, it was tastefully designed with old Charleston architecture and elegant moldings, but it was also lived in. Books stacked on side tables, a blanket draped over the back of the couch. Art by Clara pinned to the kitchen corkboard. The scent of roasted garlic met her at the door. You cook? She asked, stepping inside. I do when I need to think. She laughed. Then you must have cooked a lot this week. He glanced back at her with a grin. Pasta, okay, perfect. He handed her a glass of wine and motioned toward the back patio. They stepped out together, the sky soft with streaks of coral and blue crickets beginning to hum. This feels strange, Mara said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Good strange or bad strange? She thought about it. Like we're standing in the quiet after a storm. And now we're just waiting to see what still works. He nodded slow. That's fair. They sat in 2 chairs side by side, feet resting on the stone ledge. She's doing better, he said. Clara. He nodded. Told me about the park. Said you didn't try to make it all better. Just sat with her. Sometimes that's enough. He looked at her long and full. I've had a lot of people in my life who tried to fix things for me, he said. Not many who just stood next to the broken pieces. Mara met his gaze. I don't think you're broken, Daniel. Sometimes I feel like I still am. She took a sip of wine. Then let's stop measuring ourselves by the pieces. He looked away for a moment, then back at her. You're good at saying things like that. It's because I had to learn the hard way. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. When I hired you, I thought I was making a practical decision. Needed fresh eyes, someone from the outside. But now, she waited. I realized I wasn't just hiring skill. I was inviting something in I didn't even know I needed. The air grew still. You scare me? He admitted. Mara blinked. Why? Because I see what life could be again, and I don't know if I deserve it. Her voice was quiet. You do. He turned eyes dark but warm. What if I mess it up? Then we keep going, like we have. He reached for her hand, not suddenly, not dramatically, just simply like it had always been meant to happen. She let him. The silence between them said more than words ever could. Later, they stood in the kitchen while water boiled and garlic simmered. Mara stirred the sauce while Daniel poured more wine, the distance between them shrinking with every minute. He looked over at her. You never told me what you want? She glanced up. In general in life. She thought for a second. Something steady, something kind, a place to belong. People who mean what they say. Quiet mornings. Real laughter. He nodded. Sounds a lot like Clara's drawing. She smiled. Kids know better than we do. He leaned against the counter, watching her. I want all of that too, he said. She didn't respond, not out loud, but she felt the answer in her chest. And in the way his eyes didn't leave her, not even once. As she left later that night, the stars had scattered across the sky, and the air held that stillness only Charleston nights can carry. Daniel walked her to her car steps, unhurried. They stopped just before she opened the door. I meant what I said, he told her, about wanting something more. She looked at him. I don't know how fast or slow this should go, he added. But if it's with you, I want to figure it out. She didn't kiss him. She didn't need to. She just whispered, so do I. then got in, started the engine, and drove away with the feeling that something rare was finally beginning to unfold. Something that didn't need to be rushed, only trusted. Monday arrived with a heaviness Mara hadn't felt since her first day at Ashford Group. The weekend had shifted everything: her place in the company, her bond with Clara, and the quiet, delicate beginning of something more with Daniel. But now real life was rushing back in like the tide. The board was scheduled to meet that afternoon, and the fallout from Kyle's removal was already rippling through the company. Rumors were spreading. People were choosing sides. And though no one had said her name out loud, Mara could feel it moving through the air like static. She's the one who brought him down. She didn't regret it. But she wasn't naive. The truth always came with a price. By 9:30, her inbox was full of questions. Department heads asking for clarity, HR requesting an official memo, legal asking for copies of her audit report. Every ping felt like a weight on her chest. She barely noticed when Valerie appeared at her office door. "He wants you upstairs," she said. Now, Mara nodded, saving her work. But Valerie didn't leave. There was something in her expression, something uncharacteristically hesitant. "Just be prepared," Valerie said. "It's not going to be an easy room." Daniel stood alone in the boardroom when Mara arrived. Sunlight streamed through the long windows, casting soft light across the polished table. His sleeves were rolled, his jaw set. "Is it time?" she asked. He nodded. "They're on their way up." She moved toward the window, needing a moment before the room filled. "Are you okay?" she asked without turning. "I will be," he said. "But it's going to be a fight." She glanced at him. "You sure you want to put your name on all of it?" His eyes met hers. "You risked everything to do the right thing. The least I can do is stand beside you when it counts." The door opened behind them. Board members entered in pairs and trios, some warm, some guarded, all curious. The air shifted with each arrival. By the time everyone was seated, Mara felt like she could barely breathe. Daniel remained standing. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I'll keep this direct. Over the past month, internal audit flagged several vendor irregularities across our restaurant division. What began as a few unusual payments has now been traced to a pattern of long-term financial misconduct." Murmurs rippled through the room. Mara stayed still, eyes down on her notes, even as she felt several pairs of eyes on her. Daniel continued. "Kyle Marston was removed from his position last week. Legal is pursuing next steps. What matters now is transparency and restoring trust inside this company." One board member, a woman in her 60s with icy precision in her tone, spoke. "And who exactly conducted this audit?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Mara Linwood, my executive analyst. I brought her on to uncover blind spots. She found more than any of us expected." The woman turned to Mara. "So you're the reason we're sitting here?" Mara met her gaze. "If that's how you see it." There was a pause. Then the woman said, "Good." Another man leaned forward. "Where's the full report?" Mara slid a folder to Daniel, who distributed copies. She didn't speak again as they reviewed it. She didn't need to. Her work did. When the questions came, they were sharp, technical, and relentless. She answered everyone clearly, calmly backed by evidence. By the end of the meeting, the air had changed. Not softer, but shifted. Respect had replaced suspicion. Afterward, Daniel found her in the quiet of the rooftop garden. She was leaning on the railing, staring out at the harbor, hair pulled back, the wind playing with the few loose strands. "You were incredible," he said. She let out a breath. "I didn't feel incredible. They listened to you, all of them. I wasn't sure they would." "I was." She turned toward him, searching his face. "What now?" she asked. He stepped closer. "We rebuild." "And us? He smiled, just barely. That's the one thing I'm not rushing. She nodded. Me either, but he added, I do want more of this. More of you, if you'll have that. Mara looked down for a moment, then back up. I want it too. I just don't want to lose what we've already built. You won't, he said. We're not built on convenience, Mara. We're built on truth. Her breath hitched at that. Then Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Clara's drawing. The picnic scene. The tree. The smiles. He handed it to her. I think she knew before we did, he said. Mara traced the outline of the little figures with her thumb. She's got a good heart, she whispered. She gets that from you. Silence stretched between them, this time easy light. Then Mara looked up, eyes steady. So when do we tell her Daniel smiled? Soon. But let's make it real first. She nodded, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a tightrope. It felt like a path, one they were walking together. The rain came in quiet, steady sheets the following morning, softening the edges of the city and cloaking Charleston in a hush. From her apartment window, Mara watched people hurry beneath umbrellas, the street lamps still glowing against the gray sky. It should have felt peaceful, but her chest was tight with something she couldn't name yet. She sipped her coffee, barely tasting it, her mind spinning. Last night had been perfect, honest, hopeful. She and Daniel had crossed a line that felt less like a leap and more like finding a place they were always meant to stand. But the closer they got, the louder the other part of her life became. She hadn't planned to stay at Ashford Group forever. This was supposed to be a stepping stone, a challenge, not a chapter that reached into her heart. She didn't plan on Daniel, or Clara, or belonging. Her phone buzzed. A message from Valerie. You'll want to see this. Then another one came through. A link. Mara clicked it. A local business blog article loaded complete with a headline that made her stomach drop. Ashford exec scandal was there, a hidden whistleblower. Beneath it, a blurry photo of her walking into the boardroom 2 days ago. She scrolled. The article didn't name her outright, but the insinuation was clear. An unnamed analyst brought in by Daniel Ashford was at the center of the financial takedown. The tone wasn't cruel, but it speculated. Was she promoted too quickly? Did she have an agenda? Was this a power move dressed up as integrity? By the time she reached the end, her hands were shaking. The final line echoed in her head. Some say she's the hero of the hour. Others wonder if there's more to the story. She paced the office for 10 minutes before Daniel arrived. He walked in, set down his umbrella, and took one look at her. You saw it. She nodded. He shut the door behind him. It's nothing more than noise. A blog post designed to stir attention. It names me without naming me. I know. It says I'm the reason Kyle was pushed out. He stepped closer. You are the reason. You uncovered the truth. That's not how they'll read it. Daniel's jaw tensed. Then they don't deserve the truth. Mara turned away, running a hand through her hair. I didn't come here to be a symbol. I came to work. You did your work, he said gently. Better than anyone. She looked at him, eyes stormy. But I'm still the outsider, Daniel. I'm still the woman who went from server to analyst in less than a year. I don't have the last name. I don't have the money. I don't have the armor. He was quiet for a long beat. Then he walked to her, lowering his voice. I can't take this spotlight away from you, Mara, but I can stand in it with you. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't let the tears fall. I just want to be seen for who I am, not who they think I am. You will be. She swallowed hard. Will you still want this us, if it gets messier? He didn't flinch. Especially then. That night, Mara sat alone in her living room, her laptop open on the couch beside her. She stared at the blinking cursor in an empty email draft, one she'd opened 3 times that week. It was addressed to a recruiter in New York, a consulting firm she'd admired for years, a chance to leave the scrutiny behind. She hovered over the keyboard, her heart thudding. Outside, the rain kept falling. Then came a knock at the door. She opened it slowly. Clara stood there, soaked under a too big raincoat, a red backpack slung over one shoulder. Clara. The little girl looked up, sheepish. "Dad's on a call. I was supposed to wait, but I wanted to see you." Mara knelt. "Does he know you left?" Clara nodded. "He's just downstairs." In the car, Mara glanced behind her and saw Daniel's SUV idling at the curb. "Okay," Mara said gently. "Want to come in for a minute?" Clara stepped inside, tugging off her hood. "I made you something." She pulled a folded paper from her backpack and handed it over. It was another drawing. But this one was different. This time the woman in the picture had a tiny crown on her head. Not like a queen, like someone brave. Underneath it, Clara had written, "Real heroes don't wear capes. They carry truth." Mara blinked hard, pressing a hand to her mouth. Clara watched her. "Dad said people might say mean things, but you did the right thing anyway. That's what a hero is, right?" Mara pulled her close, holding her tight. Sometimes, she whispered, "We don't know we're brave until we already are." Clara leaned into her. "I think you're the bravest person I know." And for the first time in days, Mara breathed deeply. She wasn't just surviving this story. She was becoming it. The following week unfolded with a quiet intensity. The article had done its job. Mara couldn't walk through the Ashford offices without feeling the heat of sidelong glances, or the murmur of low conversations stopping when she entered a room. No one was overtly unkind, but no one was entirely neutral either. What surprised her most, though, were the people who came forward. A young accountant from the restaurant division stopped her in the break room. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for standing up when no one else could." A woman from HR left a note on her desk. "Your strength gave the rest of us permission to speak." The words mattered. Not because they erased the weight of scrutiny, but because they reminded her that truth has a ripple effect. Quiet courage echoes louder than scandal when you give it room. Still, Mara felt the tension building again. Not from outside, from within. She hadn't told Daniel about the job offer. It wasn't because she was leaving. She wasn't even sure she wanted to. But ever since the email sat unsent in her drafts, something inside her had been quietly asking, "Where do you belong now?" And maybe more pressingly, "Who are you becoming with him?" That Friday, she finally told him. They were in his home office. Clara asleep upstairs after movie night. Rain tapped gently at the windows. Daniel sat across from her in the armchair, sleeves, pushed-up reading glasses perched low on his nose. "I got an offer," she said softly. He looked up. "In New York, a consulting firm I used to dream about. It came through 2 weeks ago." Daniel didn't speak immediately. Before the audit finished, she added, "Before everything shifted." Still, he said nothing. Just studied her. "I didn't hide it," she said. "I just didn't know what it meant yet." And now his voice was quiet. "Now I'm still figuring it out." She exhaled, meeting his eyes. "I care about this place, Daniel. I care about you. And Clara. But I don't want to stay just because I'm afraid to leave. I've spent too many years shrinking my dreams to make other people comfortable." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Mara," he said, his voice low and steady, "I don't want you to stay for me." She blinked, caught off guard. I want you to stay because it feels right, not because I make you feel needed. You don't make me feel needed, she said. You make me feel chosen. His eyes softened. But I also know how easily that can blur things, she added, especially when life gets complicated. Daniel leaned back, rubbing his jaw. It is complicated. I won't pretend it isn't. And if I take the offer, his answer came without hesitation, then I'll support you, fully. No guilt, no questions. Her heart twisted at the calm in his voice. I don't want to lose this, she said. You won't. How can you be so sure? He smiled just a little. Because love that's rooted in truth doesn't fall apart when it's tested. It bends, it stretches, but it doesn't break. That word love hung in the space between them. She hadn't expected it, but it didn't feel rushed. It felt earned. Is that what this is? She asked. Daniel nodded. For me, yes. Every day since you walked into that restaurant and told me my numbers were wrong. She laughed, and the tension cracked. I thought you hated me that day, she said. I thought you'd change everything, he replied. You were right. And I've never been more grateful. Silence fell again, but this time it felt like a calm before something new. He stood and walked toward her, reached for her hand. You don't have to decide tonight, he said. But whatever you choose, just know I believe in you, and I'll be here, no matter what. Mara nodded, emotion catching in her throat. This wasn't a man clinging to her out of fear. This was a man ready to let her go, if that's what she needed to prove that what they had wasn't conditional. And somehow that made her want to stay more than anything else ever could. The next morning, Mara stood at the kitchen counter watching the sun break through the early clouds. The apartment was quiet. No emails. No buzzing phone. No distractions. Just her, a lukewarm mug of coffee, and the decision that still pressed quietly against her ribs. She had spent half the night going over the offer again. The numbers were incredible. The position prestigious. A clear path to everything she'd worked for over the last 10 years. But it didn't keep her up. What kept her up was the image of Clara standing in her doorway, cheeks pink from the rain, holding that drawing like it was armor. And the sound of Daniel's voice, low, steady, honest, saying, I'll be here, no matter what. She set the coffee down, then picked up her phone. Later that day, Mara walked into Ashford HQ with a different kind of energy in her step. Not the usual brisk, get-through-the-day pace, but something rooted, grounded. She passed Valerie at the reception desk. Morning, Valerie said, eyes curious. Mara smiled. Hey, is Daniel in? Valerie nodded. Took an early call, but he's wrapping up. Mara hesitated, then added, Can you let him know I'd like to see him? Of course. Valerie's voice softened. You okay? I think I'm better than okay. Daniel looked up when Mara knocked lightly on the glass door of his office. His face, usually unreadable in moments like this, broke into something close to a smile the moment he saw her. You made your choice? He said, not a question. She stepped inside, nodding. I'm staying. He exhaled, shoulders lowering just a little. You sure I've spent years chasing the version of success I thought I was supposed to want? But this, what we're building here, what I'm building with you and Clara, it's real. It's grounded in something I trust. He didn't speak. Just watched her with that same quiet reverence that always undid her a little. She stepped closer. And I don't want to run from that. I want to lean into it. Daniel came around the desk, slowly standing in front of her. You have no idea how much I wanted to hear you say that. I think I do. They stood there, inches apart. Then, just above a whisper, she added, But if I'm going to stay, I need to do it fully, which means defining who I am here, what I bring, not just following your lead. He nodded without hesitation. Of course, I don't want to be a shadow. You're the light in this place, Mara. I never wanted you hidden. Her breath caught slightly at that. "Good," she whispered. "Because I'm not hiding anymore." That afternoon, Mara called a meeting with the internal audit team. For the first time, she led it. She outlined a new transparency policy, monthly check-ins, anonymous reporting channels, a restructuring of approval chains. It wasn't flashy, but it was bold in its simplicity. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then someone clapped. And another. Soon the whole table joined. She didn't beam. She didn't deflect. She simply said, "Thank you," and let the moment hold. That night, Daniel met her at her apartment. No big plans, no dinner reservations, just Thai takeout and the comfort of silence between people who no longer needed to fill it. Clara called halfway through the meal, FaceTime from her grandmother's house across town. When Mara's face popped into view, Clara squealed. "Guess what? I started a new drawing. Us on a boat, you're steering. Dad's reading. I have snacks." Mara laughed. "I love it already." Clara leaned into the screen. "Are we going to go on a boat soon?" Daniel chimed in. "We'll make it happen, sweetheart." Clara grinned, then added, "You look happy, Mara." Mara blinked, her heart tugging. "I am." After the call ended, Daniel slid closer on the couch. They sat shoulder to shoulder, the warmth between them quiet and strong. "I meant it, you know," she said. He looked at her. "About staying. About not hiding. I never doubted you." She leaned her head against his shoulder. For the first time, she whispered, "I feel like I'm not trying to prove anything. Just be who I am." He brushed a hand over hers, slow and sure. "You're more than enough, Mara." The room settled around them, soft and still. And for the first time in a long time, so did she. The sky was painted in soft amber and lavender when Daniel pulled the car into a narrow gravel drive that led to the edge of the water. Cypress trees lined the banks, their roots curling like fingers into the dark, still creek. A rowboat waited at the dock, tied with a loose knot, swaying gently in the current. Clara gasped from the back seat. "This is perfect." Daniel glanced at Mara, who smiled as she stepped out of the car, the breeze lifting the edge of her shirt. "She's been talking about this boat trip for days. She's not the only one," he said, eyes never leaving hers. They made their way to the dock together, Daniel carrying a cooler, Mara holding Clara's hand as she skipped along the wooden planks. The boat creaked as they stepped in, but it held steady. Daniel took the oars. Clara handed out the sandwiches she and Mara had made that morning. It was quiet on the water, the kind of quiet that feels rare-earned. Clara leaned over the side of the boat, watching the ripples fan out in every direction. "We should do this every weekend." Mara smiled. "That's ambitious. Not every weekend," Daniel said, "but we'll come back. Promise." Clara gave a satisfied nod, then dug into her sandwich. For a while, they just drifted. Later, after the sun dipped low and turned the water gold, Clara curled up in the middle bench with a sketch pad. Her eyes were heavy, her pencil slow. Mara watched her, then turned to Daniel. This is what she needed. What we all needed," he said quietly. Mara looked at him. He reached for her hand, careful not to wake Clara. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "I want to take a step back from the day-to-day at Ashford." Her brow lifted. "You're serious, I'm not walking away. There are things I've missed. Important things. I've built this company for years, but somewhere along the way, I forgot how to live in the life I was building." Mara exhaled slowly. "You want to be more present?" He nodded. "For Clara. For myself. For you, if you'll let me." She was quiet for a moment, letting the words settle. "What would that even look like? I've been training people to lead. I trust them. And I trust you." Mara's chest tightened. "What are you saying? I want you to take on a bigger role," he said. Not just behind the scenes. Front and center. Strategic director. You'd help shape the vision, not just respond to it. She blinked. Daniel? I know what you're capable of, Mara. So do they. And I want everyone to see it. Her breath caught. That's a big step. For both of us, he said. But I think we're ready. She looked down at their joined hands. I don't want people to say I got there because of you, then show them you got there in spite of it. She smiled softly. You always know what to say. No, he whispered. I just finally learned how to listen. Back on shore, Clara had dozed off sketchpad, still clutched in one hand. Daniel carried her to the car, whispering something as he tucked her into the back seat. Mara packed up the leftover sandwiches and folded the blankets, her thoughts still reeling from the conversation in the boat. She wasn't used to being seen this clearly, or trusted so deeply. When Daniel returned, they lingered under the cypress trees, the fading light casting long shadows across the grass. You sure about this? She asked, voice low. He stepped closer. The company. Or us both. I've never been more certain of anything. She looked up at him, wind brushing a strand of hair across her face. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, he said. But that's how I know it matters. He touched her cheek gently. Not possessive. Just present. And then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't the end of something or the start of something new. It was a quiet yes in the middle of a life that was finally unfolding exactly the way it was meant to. When they pulled apart, he whispered, Let's build this on purpose. Mara nodded. Not because it was easy, but because, for the first time, it was right. The Ashford Foundation's Spring Gala was held beneath a canopy of twinkling string lights and old oak trees in downtown Charleston. The evening buzzed with quiet elegance, soft jazz spilling into the warm night, the scent of gardenias drifting through the courtyard, and guests dressed in understated grace rather than flash. It wasn't the kind of event Mara would have imagined herself attending a year ago, let alone helping plan. But here she was. Her name was printed neatly under Daniel's on the program as Strategic Director. She had her own small speech to give. And a seat at the head table. You're staring at the place cards again? Daniel murmured beside her, his tone warm. I'm making sure my name's still there, she replied, a little breathless. He leaned closer. It's not going anywhere. She smiled but didn't answer. Her heels were still in her bag. She'd been barefoot for the last 20 minutes. Clara ran by in a soft green dress, her curls bouncing. Can I have one more macaron? Mara lifted an eyebrow. How many is that now, 3? But I'm dancing them off, Daniel laughed. One more. Then some water deal. Clara flashed a thumbs up and darted off. She's happier, Mara said quietly. Calmer. She feels safe. She's seen what honesty looks like, what love looks like. Mara looked up at him. We're not perfect. We're real, he replied. And that's better. A few board members approached, nodding greetings. Mara excused herself and headed toward the small garden behind the venue, needing a breath before her speech. The path curved beneath hanging moss and lanterns, the world hushed just enough for her thoughts to settle. A year ago, she had stood in a kitchen defending a child to a man who saw people as disposable. She hadn't been trying to be brave, just decent. She had no idea that moment would reroute her entire life, and she hadn't known how hard it would be to trust that she belonged in the rooms she was being invited into. But now, she wasn't just being invited. She was helping build the rooms. She sat on a wooden bench tucked beneath an arbor, the program still in her hand. Her fingers traced over her name, letting it sink in. Then she heard footsteps. You disappeared, Daniel said, approaching gently. Just needed a minute. He handed her a glass of water and sat beside her. I've been thinking, he said. We've spent a lot of time moving carefully, protecting what we have, waiting to see if it holds. And I don't want to move carefully anymore. Mara looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly with curiosity. What are you saying? I'm saying, I love you. I think I've known that since you made me rethink my entire operations structure on day 2. She laughed, the sound catching in her throat. He took her hand. And I want us to move forward with full hearts, not guarded ones. Mara blinked back, sudden warmth. You sure you want to build with someone who still gets nervous before public speaking? He leaned in. I want to build with someone who tells the truth, even when her voice shakes. She swallowed. I love you too, Daniel. He kissed her forehead. Then let's go start our next chapter. The speech went well. Her voice did shake at first, but then she looked out and saw Clara beaming from the front row, and Daniel watching her like she was the center of the room. And suddenly her fear gave way to purpose. She spoke about second chances, about listening to people who weren't used to being heard, about integrity even when it's inconvenient. And when she ended with, real change doesn't come from titles, it comes from truth. The applause that followed felt like a quiet kind of thunder. Later, after the crowd had thinned and the music faded, Clara fell asleep in the back seat of the car, her sketch pad on her lap. Mara held it carefully as they drove home. She flipped through the pages scenes from their new life. A tree swing, a breakfast table, a boat, a trio of hearts each labeled with their names. On the last page in bold purple crayon, Clara had written, "Home isn't where you start. It's where people choose you, and you choose them back." Mara touched the drawing with the tip of her finger and let the moment settle deep in her heart.